The Entrepreneurial Journey Podcast. We're talking business and building a culture that's kick-ass. Where we make it happen, grab your seat, let's have a blast. At the Entrepreneurial Journey Podcast.
Welcome to the Entrepreneurial Journey Podcast, Rob. I've got Rob Begg with me here today. Hi, how are you doing?
I'm great, thanks, Rebecca. I'm great, thank you, and thank you for having me.
Oh, absolute pleasure. So, Rob, you align entrepreneurs with their goals, and just before we came live now, we were talking about hearts and minds.
Yeah.
And you align their hearts and minds. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I help them to get alignment between their vision and their goals, which are in essence spiritual, because they're not in their experience yet. So that's what their hearts desire and their mind. And the interesting thing is our heart is seeking expansion, expression, more experience, greater experience. And yet our mind is really invested in preserving the status quo. So if we're mind-led, we're always going to be led by our beliefs, and our progress is going to be incremental, or we end up getting stuck at certain points or find ourselves going in yo-yo patterns. Whereas if we're heart-led, then the mind falls into line with the heart, and it's so in contrast to how we're conditioned to operate. So I help entrepreneurs understand how to lead with the heart, so the mind falls into place. Otherwise, it's a battle, if you like. We're at war with ourselves otherwise.
So true. So true. Okay. Now, as a kid in school, that's not what you wanted to be when you grow up, I'm guessing.
Yeah, it's interesting. Funny enough, all my life I wanted to be a vet.
Oh, wow.
Until I had that dream knocked out of me by a schoolmaster who I looked up to at the time, who just told me one day, he said, "You need to drop that. You need to put that aspiration away because you're just not intelligent enough."
Oh, nice.
And unfortunately, I've no regrets now because I love what I do, and perhaps he had a point, but I buried that dream and accepted that what he was telling me was true. So at the time, anyway. So you're right.
That's so crushing. And I had my hair done yesterday. My hairdresser said the same. One of her teachers told her when she was young that she would never amount to anything. Now, I'm hoping teaching has moved on a pace since those days.
You'd hope so,
and that
wouldn't you?
longer happens. I hope and pray that no longer happens.
Yes.
So what did you do instead? You weren't a vet. What did you do instead?
So I went into business. I went through school, university, and then set up in business myself by accident rather than by design. I met somebody when I was at university who kind of encouraged me on the entrepreneurial journey. So I started a business, and because I didn't really know what else to do, and kind of fell into furniture business, and had quite an interesting journey. And very long story short, evolved into a business where one day I turned around, I was employing 30 odd people, and we were doing okay, but it was I never felt secure, safe. I always felt like when I get to the next milestone, then I'll be able to, relax a bit and feel a bit more chilled about life and so on. And unbeknownst to me, I was working against myself half the time. It was all a hard work model, getting up early in the morning and putting in the hours in the belief that if I just can get this done, then I'll get to the next level. And ultimately, I got pretty twisted out of shape, ended up with depression and so on. And that led me into a world of personal development and seeking answers and all the rest of it. And ultimately led me here. And looking back, I can see how perfect the journey was. I'm so grateful. Although I didn't necessarily enjoy it at the time, but yeah.
You can only really join the dots backwards often.
Yes.
And I think when you've been through an experience like that, it then teaches you that no matter where you're at right now, there's a reason for it. And actually,
Yes.
whilst you might not be able to make sense of it right at this moment, it's exactly where you need to be.
Exactly, yeah. And it's always, our circumstances are always teaching us something. Everything's always working in our favor, albeit I fully accept that it may not feel like that at all at times.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so did you sell the business? What happened to the
I did,
business?
yeah. So I sold the
Okay.
business. Did I get a life-changing sum of money that represented 25 or 30 years of blood, sweat, and tears? No, but I got what I wanted in terms of, getting some money and getting out. And then took a bit of time out to decide what next. And I'd had some experience of being coached along the way, and I'd got quite a lot out of it personally. And I thought, well, that would be lovely to be able to help other people. And so I trained as a business coach, spent a year or thereabouts training as a business coach, and then spent the next 6, 7 years with the primary focus of business coaching.
Okay. And at what point in that business coaching journey did you start, and let's call it spiritual or heart led or
Yeah.
tapping into your unconscious, whichever label you want to put onto it. At
Yes.
what point in that business coaching journey did you think, ooh, there's something else here that I've not yet explored?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think throughout all that time, from having prior to selling my business, I had been on this journey of starting with traditional personal development and then working up into trying to really get to the heart of the issue, if you like. And so throughout my time as a business coach, I'd been relentlessly still studying and worked with some pretty well-known people around the world in the world of personal development and so on. And I was also curious about my clients. Some of them were strataspheric successful without necessarily displaying much in the way of a coherent strategy or an intellectual capability or any of the things that we might conventionally label as being required for success. And some of them had all the attributes for being successful. They were intelligent, they're capable, they strategized. They were great, but yet they didn't seem to be able to make the breakthroughs that others did. And I was inherently curious about, well, what is the real driver? What's at the source of it?
Mm.
So I was running this twin track of observing my clients and my own journey. And then I guess I just had a bit of a realization that actually at source it's where we're pointing the torch of our heart. It's what we're emotionally involved with. There's a lot of teaching in the world of personal development about where focus goes, energy flows. But
Mm-hmm.
the trouble is that teaches us to focus on the goal and to think to the goal. And that helps us, but it's slow and it's arduous. And it's typically a lot of the teaching is based on you need to work harder in order to and focus more and take massive action and all the rest of it. And it's just not true. We need to learn how to think and feel from our goals, not towards them.
Now, how do you think and feel from your goal?
Yes. So I'd say that most entrepreneurs, if this is an entrepreneurial audience, that
It is.
most entrepreneurs have goals. Many don't.
Mm.
However, one thing is clear: most people in the world have what I call a negative vision, even when they perceive it to be positive. What they're really going after is the opposite of what they don't want.
Mm.
So they're trying to achieve something to get away from a fear or away from
Mm.
a sense of if I in order to be more worthy, feel more safe, more secure, more loved, more approved of, etc. I'll achieve that, and when I achieve that, then I'll feel all of those things. So most people have a negative vision. They're not really going after what it is their heart desires. They're going after what their mind fears, or they're going after the opposite of what their mind fears. So that acts as a big anchor. That's always going to get in our way, and because we're not really following our true desire. But to answer your question, when we have goals, people are pretty good at naming them. Like, oh,
Mm.
I want to get to 5 million or 10 million or 20 million, or I want to change the world. We're very good at naming our goals, but we're not very good at knowing them. Like, who is that person who has achieved that goal? Do you know that version of yourself who has already achieved that goal? And true visionaries, those who achieve stratospheric success, the one common denominator about them is they know who they are and they know that version of themselves. So
Mm.
when we step into that future self, if you like, which we have the ability to do because who we really are is greater than any state. We move in and out of states of consciousness. When we step into that future version of ourselves and start to get to know that person, immerse ourselves there emotionally, we start to think differently, we start to behave differently, act differently, show up differently, and therefore create different results. The one thing we've got to, sorry, Rebecca,
No,
the one
go
thing
on.
we have to face along the way when we do that is that when we step into that new version of ourselves, what's been in our unconscious, typically from childhood conditioning or early conditioning, what's been in our unconscious and keeping our current results in play starts to become conscious. And
Mm.
often what people do is they buy into that and then they come back into the old patterns of thinking and behaving. And that was certainly my journey for ages. I'd get two steps ahead and then I'd get one and a half steps backwards. And I believe what was showing up in my life.
So that's literally the conversation we just had before we recorded, because you asked
Yeah.
me how things were going. And that's exactly what it said: 2 steps forward, 1.5 back. So
Yes.
is there something there? So let me get this right, and sort of translate it in my own head and see if I've understood this correctly. So is there, what you're saying, something, even though you're making progress, there's something that is so built into you from childhood, usually in the form of a belief, that keeps pulling you back to not quite to where you started, but pulls you back?
Um, yes, and I kind of want to be a bit careful about the articulation of this because it's.
Okay.
But so yes, the vast majority of our thoughts, feelings, behaviors, and so on, and of course our results are driven by our unconscious.
Mm-hmm.
We think we're in charge of ourselves. We think able to make conscious decisions, but all of our thinking, all of our feeling, all of our actions, and our results come from our state of being.
Mm-hmm.
We're called human beings for a reason, not human doings.
Yeah.
Lots of people work very hard all their lives, very capable, have strategies, take massive action, do all the right things, and never get the results. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not because of their inability, it's because of their state. They're coming at the goal from their state, from the awareness of being where they are.
Okay.
Whereas if we really want to go fast, we've got to step into the awareness of being where we want to be.
Okay. Okay.
And so I'm not sure I fully answered your question.
No, I get that. And how do you do that?
So traditional personal development and even some of the stuff that's more mainstream now teaches us that we need to change our beliefs in order to change our reality, change our behaviors, and so on. However, that's I went down that road, and it's a slog. It's hard work to try and change beliefs at the level of the beliefs when they're unconscious. I mean, we don't have to search for our unconscious beliefs. Lots of coaches will charge you a lot of money to help you understand what your unconscious beliefs are. If you want to know what they are, look at your life.
Yeah.
They're on display.
Yeah.
Um, our life is a perfect mirror for what we believe to be true.
Yeah.
So the best way to change our beliefs is to change our state, move into a state of consciousness that's aligned with our goals, because automatically our thoughts and our beliefs change. And an example of that would be if you wake up on a Monday morning and you're feeling really confident and really positive and all the rest of it, you believe different things.
Yeah, you do.
Whereas if you wake up and you're a bit anxious or a bit worried or doubtful, or you've allowed your circumstances to trigger you, your thoughts and beliefs are different. So when we step into and understand how to stay in a state of consciousness that's aligned with our desires, our beliefs fall into place, and that's about bringing the mind into alignment with the heart.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas if
I completely get that. Yeah.
we try and change the mind at the level of the mind, it's what's the analogy I used the other day? It's a bit like asking a police officer to catch a thief when the police officer is the thief.
Right. I'm with you. I'm with you. Okay. So, again, to bring this to real life, last week I wasn't sleeping very well. I'm perimenopausal. It's one of the side effects. And so last week was, business is hard, business is difficult. I may just go and get a job as an Amazon driver and call it a day. This, But because I'm aware of state, I
Yes.
also knew that was because I'd had no sleep. And
Right.
so the conversation with myself was very much, look, Rebecca, you're only feeling like this because you've had no sleep.
Yes.
Don't do anything. Don't make any decisions. Just and what I do is I garden. So I gardened over the weekend,
Okay.
got back into balance. Now
Yep.
have had great sleep since Sunday night, and everything's wonderful again. And,
Yes.
my business is a great thing and I love it and I love the people I work with and blah, blah, blah. And so that's a really real life example of state. And is that what
Yes.
you're talking about?
In essence, yeah,
Mhm.
I think if we're talking about the entrepreneurial journey here, the entrepreneurial journey, we spoke briefly before the start of this about how
Mm.
it's the ultimate spiritual journey. We're
Mhm.
constantly having to shift our state into the next level of success in order to materialize it in our life. I think we have to be very careful about the what we believe. If we believe that our thoughts and feelings are real, we're going to end up circulating
Mm.
experience and circumstances. So, and I'm really conscious that I don't want to make you wrong here, but the reason you were thinking and feeling like that wasn't because you didn't have a good night's sleep.
Mhm.
That's a story. It wasn't to do with your lack of sleep. It
Mhm.
was to do with something that's residing in your consciousness.
Mm.
Otherwise it just wouldn't come up.
Yep.
But
Fair
it's
comment. Yeah.
coming up into our awareness for us to transcend that, to look at it, recognize that it's not the truth. It's a story of the mind seeking to pull you back to preserving the status quo,
Mm.
because the ego, which is really just a belief in that we are separate and that we're a mind and body, is invested in two things: security,
Mhm.
safety, security, and being loved, being worthy, being it's all of that. And it doesn't want the change that our heart wants.
That's fascinating. Okay, so your own spiritual journey. At what point did you stop being a business coach, and how did you make that transition into what you're doing now?
Yeah, without wanting to bore people with too much detail, my life ended up being a bit of a car crash. I had so
Okay.
many lessons along the way that I look back now and think, God, I had so many opportunities to wake up to the fact that I was creating all this unwanted in my life through my habitual way of being
Mhm.
and subsequently way of thinking and acting. Because I used to take my cues from the outside world, from this or from what I considered to be the outside world at the
Ah,
time. I allowed that to drive a lot of my thinking.
okay.
So I ended up in a not in a mess, not in a mess financially or whatever, but emotionally, to the point where I just had a realization that I fundamentally just couldn't go on the way I was going on.
Hmm.
And it was almost like it was a spiritual awakening of sorts. And then I turned to starting to do the things that I'd made excuses for not being able to do in the past. I didn't, I tried meditation in the past, but not with an understanding of what meditation is.
Hmm.
And I'd always find reasons why I couldn't do it, or it was difficult, or didn't have time, or
Hmm.
whatever. So I kind of committed to, because I understood that the source of our results is spiritual. Like,
Hmm.
where do our thoughts come from? Where So I really committed to that. And back to what you said earlier on, I bet this wasn't you didn't envisage doing this when you were at school. No, I
Hmm.
didn't. And my ego didn't want me to be coming into this line of work. My ego wanted me to stay in a world of real world commerce.
Ah,
Keep it real, keep it practical, keep it business coaching or entrepreneurial journey.
okay.
Don't get into that spiritual nonsense. My ego really didn't want that, and yet it's just the best thing that I've ever done.
There's so many things I could ask questions about that, but if we have many people listen to this who are entrepreneurs, who are building businesses or starting businesses, and they may well be sitting there going, well, look, that's lovely, Rob, but I've got a team of 40 people, I've got payroll to meet, I've got a P&L, I've got this, I've got that. How do I relate that to that relentless, very real figures on a bank balance and meeting
Yes.
payroll? How do I relate it to that?
Yes. So the first thing, so in terms of kind of practical steps, the first thing is to accept what is,
Okay.
because it's here.
Mm-hmm.
The bank statement is, the cash is, the situation is. So as soon as we accept it as being here, we drop the resistance to it.
Yes.
And it's our resistance to situations that hold them in our experience. If I keep resisting my financial situation, then I'm just going to keep experiencing more of the same. So the first step is accept what is, and then we drop our resistance to it, because it makes no sense to fight what's already here. And then it's to move from how do I fix this problem, which is what we're conditioned to do. How do I get from A to B, to saying what does my heart want? What would I love to be in my experience, versus what am I trying to fight to avoid? What would I love to be my experience? And that might be a world where business is flowing in, cash is plentiful, I've got plenty of time, I've got time for family, I've got time for doing the things I love, all of that stuff. Start to connect with that vision, not just of the goal, but what implies the goal is fulfilled. And then to feel into that. Because then what happens is we elevate our consciousness and we start to then come at we think differently, and our thinking, we believe differently, and we have different assumptions about things, and our assumptions will always lead us to the fulfillment of the underlying assumption.
Yeah.
So we've got to that's the kind of snapshot practical steps, if you like, is to go from, Albert Einstein said, you can't solve the problem from the same level of thinking that created it, or he allegedly said it. And that's exactly it. If we're coming at our problems from the level of the problem, we might solve it in the short term, but it's like playing whack-a-mole.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so...
Yeah. One of the things I help my clients understand is how to feel things in their bodies, because I'll ask them, how does that make me feel? And then they'll give me a list of things that aren't feelings. And,
Yes.
and then they'll say, yeah, but where actually do you feel that in your body? And so many people are not connected to their bodies and can't identify where that feeling is in their bodies. And it's really sad, because your body actually tells you everything you need to know.
Yes.
When you get those visceral feelings, by gum, you've got to pay attention to them, because that's the real thing. Your brain is just over rationalizing or overthinking or rewriting or whatever, but your body is honest.
Yes, it's absolutely. And one of the reasons that people can't go into their bodies and connect, and that was my experience, the principal reason really, we're conditioned to live from we're in the Western world, we're conditioned to value the intellect above all else.
We are.
So we get trained into to value intellect and thinking and all that stuff. But one of the reasons is that really going into our body requires us to be fully present.
Yeah.
Going back to that childlike innocence, if you like, to be fully present. And the problem for so many of us is that the last time we went there, the last time we allowed ourselves to be free in our bodies, we got wounded. We got wounded as children in different ways, shapes, or forms. So we suffered abandonment, rejection, ridicule. So it doesn't feel safe.
Okay.
So we've got used to navigating the world from the shoulders up.
That's really interesting.
And therefore we're driven by our intellect and our beliefs, and that's why we go around in familiar old patterns. The faces and people
I,
change, but
You've answered a question for me, which is why we don't have. I knew that, yeah, education kind of knocks that mind-body connection out of you, but I hadn't occurred to me that actually the last time we were in our bodies was potentially a time when we were hurt.
yes,
Yeah, that makes perfect sense, actually.
and we've got out of the habit of that head, heart, gut relationship.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So you support business owners and entrepreneurs with this connection. At what point do they get in touch with you, or do they appear on your horizon? What kind of state are they in?
Yeah, I think the answer is it depends.
Mm,
Often when they've hit a plateau or they've got to a point of frustration where they're just trying to get to the next level and somehow they're just not able to break through. I worked with a couple of very successful entrepreneurs. One who first came to me, he'd just sold his business for 50 million, and
wow.
he said, I don't know what to do next.
Okay.
I thought I would be happy and fulfilled when I sold the business, and it's just not. I've got the money. I don't have the financial worries, but I've not found that inner fulfillment that I thought I might find when I exited the business.
Because it ain't in pound notes, is it?
It's not. It's in being present.
Yeah.
It's in understanding our true nature. Because for as long as we identify as being a mind and body, we're always going to be in seeking mode, and there's always going to be an underlying level of angst. Is maybe too strong a word, but some internal disquiet. So the answer is it depends. I meet people at various different stages, and the common denominator amongst them all is a willingness to look to themselves as being the true origin of results.
Yeah. I've got a question for you. Recently, I have been extremely content, much more content than I've ever been in my life, in a really nice way.
Great.
And I don't know whether it's age, experience, or the realization that I've actually pretty much achieved most of the things I've set out to achieve, and it feels really nice, and I genuinely appreciate it. I like what I'm doing, and I'm keeping going with it. It feels odd to still be doing it from a place of contentment, because in the past I've been doing it from a place of what's next.
Yes.
What's your comment on that? And is that something you've experienced?
Yeah, and it's at the heart of it. It's very much at the center of the work that I do with clients is to come at our goals. We either come at our goals for fulfillment,
Okay.
or we come at our goals from fulfillment. And the fastest way to achieving your goals is from fulfillment. So getting that rid of that sense of lack first, and then the whole journey is just so much more enjoyable. And one of the most tragic things, I think, Rebecca, not just for entrepreneurs, is people don't know how to live their lives. We can't. Nobody has ever experienced the past, and nobody ever will experience the future. The past is held in our mind, and the future is held in our mind. We can only be now, and it's the only place we can create our future from. And yet, most people are driven by, and this is the story of my life, they're run by their minds. So, and the only place the mind doesn't want to spend any time, because the ego doesn't get to survive there. The mind is preoccupied with the past and the future. When I get to here, then I'll feel fulfilled, etc. So, fulfillment first, because that's when we connect into who we really are, and that's when we allow life is just trying to happen through us. Our desire, where do our desires come from? Like, why do you want to build the business you want, and I do what I do, and why is that? Well, we're all individuated aspects of consciousness. Our desires aren't given to us to torture ourselves with. They're not given to us for us not to achieve. If we'll allow it, our desires just want to happen through us. We just have the ability to shut them off because of our conditioned thinking.
Yeah, that's a lovely way of thinking about it.
And I had a client, I often reference him. I had a client about 2 years ago said to me, we were chatting about, he hadn't engaged with me by then. He said, I've got a bit of a concern about working with you, Rob. So I said, what's that? And he said, well, what if the only thing I get from working with you, quite a successful entrepreneur, he said, what if the only thing I get from working with you is that I'm blissfully happy all the time? And he was genuinely concerned.
That was his fear. What if I am happy? Oh no, panic.
Yeah, but it was so interesting. What if I'm just blissfully happy all the time? And I said, he said, I want the next level of business. And I said, well, why do you want that?
Yeah.
Why do you want the bigger house and the car and the? He said, well, because I think I'll feel happier. I said, exactly. But you'll get the bigger house and the car and the income and all the rest of it on the back of being happy. It doesn't work the other way around.
No, it doesn't work the other way around. Yeah, really. No, it really, really doesn't work and if you do get the bigger house and the bigger car and you're still unhappy, you're just sitting in a bigger house, just as unhappy. And in fact, more unhappy because you're like, but I've got the bigger house. I should be happy now.
Yeah.
It's not an equation that works.
It's not. There's never enough of more. For as long as we're ego led, there's never enough of more. And in the moment, the problem is it becomes an addiction, because when we get that deal over the line, someone says yes, or we pick up the keys to the new car or the new house. In that moment, we become fully present. We come out of the mind and we're preoccupied in the moment, and therefore we come back to our true nature. And we feel fulfilled in the moment. But if we don't understand what's going on, no sooner are we in the house than, oh God, look, the roof's leaking, or I need this, or God, look at the council tax bill, or have you seen the heating bill, or we need the next level of income, or we're back to chasing more. There's never enough of more when we come at life like that.
No, there's always somebody with a bigger yacht.
Yeah.
There's always somebody with a bigger yacht. Yeah. Always. Except
I have a client who has a friend who sold his business for quite a lot of money, and he was a member of a yacht club. And one of the things he wanted to buy when he sold his business was a big yacht. So he bought a big yacht, and he made sure that it was the biggest yacht of all the people in the yacht club. Okay. So he was very happy for about 18 months until someone else bought a bigger yacht.
Yeah. Always somebody with a bigger yacht. Except when we went on a cruise, and we're on this massive P&O cruise ship. This was a few years ago. And the captain, who was from Burnley, said, right, ladies and gentlemen, we're in Monte Carlo. He said, this is the only time in your life where you can genuinely say, I've got the biggest yacht.
Brilliant. And
we're like, yay. Yeah, so true. Okay, I love all of that. I think that's fantastic. And yeah, one of the reasons I wanted to get you on this is because when I work with business owners, the richest and best outcomes for everyone are when they are in touch with their spirituality, their energy, their universal connection, their humanity, their unconscious processes, whatever word you want to ascribe to it. That's actually where the magic begins to happen. And you're absolutely right. And the more people that understand that, the better. And I think the happier workplaces there will be to work.
Yeah, when we understand our true nature, we not only understand our power to create and shape our world as we want it, but we find that fulfillment that we can't get from the external world.
Yeah. Now, I'm also not daring to ask this question, Rob, but it's a question I ask everybody. Where are you taking the business?
Well, that's a great question, actually. And I'm on the cusp of, I've got a client, we were chatting last week about playing a bigger game, and he brought up the subject, and it was interesting timing because it's exactly where I'm at.
Okay.
So I've got some plans. Probably keep them under wraps for now, only because they're not fully formed. But I'm seeking to play a bigger game and take this awareness into into our education system. I've got a couple of live conversations going there.
Good.
And yeah, just find ways and means of expanding the reach. I'm doing some work in the US now and got some couple of interesting conversations there. And yeah, I think for me, there's the thing I get thanked for. People engage because they say, well, "Can you help me get my business to the next level?" And absolutely, that's an outcome that they achieve. But interestingly, having been through the program, the thing that I get thanked for the most is, thanks so much. My business has improved. I got X more income, etc. But I just feel so much happier and more peaceful and fulfilled and so on. And my comment back to them is always, yeah, but you'd never have bought that, would you?
No, they wouldn't.
You never have bought that. That's the thing you value most, but you wouldn't have bought it.
No.
And without exception, they all admit that that's the case. So if that's what you've been selling, we wouldn't have bought it.
Years and years ago, when I first was on my own spiritual journey and I first started learning NLP and all of that, that was my proposition, is that actually be happier, more content, sort yourself out and your business will follow. Nobody bought it.
Yeah.
Nobody bought it. But the minute I flipped it to, well, let's sort your business out and get that to the next level, everybody's like, brilliant. And then, oh, Rebecca, after each session, I feel so much better. Oh, yeah, funny that.
Yeah, exactly.
You're right.
Yeah.
You're so right. You're so right. Okay, if your business had a character or a personality, how would you describe it, Rob?
If my business had a character or personality?
Yeah.
Well, currently I'd like to think it was me. So, yeah, great question. I guess it's an extension of me. Fulfilled, content, progressive, but not in a striving way. Yeah. I don't know how to answer that, in fairness.
Okay.
Yeah.
The way I experience your business from an outsider, and I haven't used your services, but I know people who have, and they speak very highly of you, is that it's a very gentle approach to get great results.
Yes.
But gentle is the word that comes to my mind.
Okay. Yeah, and I guess that's interesting. I think I am capable of giving my clients a more than gentle kick now and again, but in order to really shift our results, like to go from, if we want to multiply our income rather than get 20% uplift or 50% uplift, in order to really shift, we've got to shift our understanding of who we are, our concept of self. And if we've been identified with a certain raft of beliefs and perceptions and assumptions about ourselves relating to mind and body for all our life, for 30, 40, 50 years, I think it would be neglectful of me to do anything other than giving people a gentle wake-up call. They get the awareness through the experience of the journey, but doing anything other than respecting where they're at and wanting to get to, I think would be irresponsible on my part. We've got to go, when we go unseating the ego, we got to know what we're doing and be a bit careful around that.
Yeah. And so many business owners, their identity is tied up with their business, and they just don't know who they are.
Yeah. Yes.
They don't. They are the business, and if that isn't there, then they haven't a clue who they are.
Absolutely. And that was my story. I was up when my business was doing well, and I was down when my business wasn't. And then all that journey of being tied, your identity being tied to the business and all the rest of it.
Yeah. Cool. I'm going to watch with interest, Rob, and see where you take it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
The Entrepreneurial Journey Podcast. We're talking business and building a culture that's kick-ass. Where we make it happen. Grab your seat, let's have a blast. entrepreneurial journey.